I am proud of you, my sons. Tonight, you have learned the final and greatest truth of the ninja. That ultimate mastery comes not of the body, but of the mind.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. We're going to cover some news that came out last weekend. My good friend Mark Pellegrini, who's a certified TMNT superfan, he was out on the convention circuit, wasn't able to join me, so he was able to make it this weekend. Going to talk about a little TMNT. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing good, because this is my favorite subject, and I've been looking forward to talking about it, even though it's sad news.
Not only that, you're doing good. You guys got like 1,999 backers on Kickstarter. You've already gone over $100,000 in like 2 days. What the hell?
We were not expecting that. So with the Kamen America 4 and Kamen America Omnibus pre-orders on Kickstarter, we made 100,000 in 2 days. Our previous Kickstarter pre-orders that we did starting in July for the Kamen America Black Ops crossover, that made 100,000 in 60 days. So it took 2 months to get there. And with this one, we made that money in 2 days. We were not anticipating that. We are incredibly grateful to the huge show of support from everybody, Tim and I, who just showed up on day one. In the first 48 hours, there's a lot of enthusiasm for our book, and that means a lot. It means that people have been enjoying it. Kamen America 4 concludes the opening storyline that we call the Stars and Stripes saga. So folks who have been following since the beginning want to see how that first storyline ends. They're eager for it. So just a quick pitch. For everybody, if you're new to Kamen America, we have the Kamen America Omnibus as part of that pre-order as well, and that collects volumes 1 through 4, the entire Stars and Stripes saga, so you could get that instead and catch up all at once. You
got to hear the price, though. Tell them what the price is and how many pages on that hardcover omnibus.
Oh, that hardcover omnibus. It collects 4 volumes, and it is $25 for 240 pages. We have to keep our prices competitive.
$45
in hardcover. Yes. We got to keep our prices low because we have to compete with Marvel and DC and all the mainstream books that everybody's heard of. So to get our indie books out there and in people's hands, we got to make it affordable and appealing.
That's absolutely the best bargain you're going to find on Kickstarter, Indiegogo. Absolutely insane that you guys will be able to do that price. And if you haven't checked it out, absolutely do. There is a link in the video description. Congratulations to Tim and Mark. Absolutely, we are very big fans of your guys here, and couldn't happen to a better set of guys. Things just keeps growing, baby. You're not even counting the numbers you've made on Indiegogo last time. I think you went over 130.
So Kamen America Black Ops crossover did 102 on Kickstarter, and I think it did 25K on Indiegogo for the limited overstock. That one only ran for 2 weeks because it was just to sell off our overstock. So altogether,
130.
Yeah, so almost 130 on Black Ops X Kamen America. And then, of course, what we have left is going to go on the iconiccomics.com store, so that'll just keep, being out there in circulation. Yeah.
Great stuff. Obviously, our good friend Eric Canetti's got Arc Athena on Indiegogo right now, also through Iconic Comics. That book is also already finished and ready to go. It will be distributed as soon as his crowdfunding is over as well. So congratulations to all the friends. Everyone's making great comic books today. Unfortunately, Mark, we don't get to just talk about all the good stuff. We got to talk about some sad things here every now and again. And now Mirage Studios, the brainchild of Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, obviously sold off TMNT to Viacom and Nickelodeon, 2009, 2008?
2009.
2009. So they haven't been making TMNT comics for quite some time, other than I think there was some black and white stuff that Peter Laird had done.
Yep. So part of Peter Laird's contract with Viacom, the terms and conditions of the sale, was that he can self-publish up to, I think, 15 black and white Ninja Turtle books a year on his own. And basically it's to allow him to finish Ninja Turtles Volume 4. I think since the sale in 2009, I think he's only actually published 2 issues, and the last one was in 2014. So he hasn't really taken much advantage of it, but he still always has the contractual option to do so.
Yeah, so basically they've been a merchandise store and maybe like a historical archive for Mirage Studios.
They've just kind of been there. I mean, they have they still had a huge overstock of all their books that they've had, you know, stacks and stacks. You could still buy back issues of the old Mirage comics from the Mirage Group website. And in fact, I bought a bunch from them. They had some Fugitoid figures. I bought one last year, and Peter Laird signed and remarked it just randomly for me. I got it in the mail, and it wasn't even supposed to have a signature or a remark on it. That was just something nice that he did for people buying that Fugitoid figure. That was a cute, cool surprise. And now they're gone.
Unfortunately, yes, the announcement went over on the website. It's like, hey, this is it. Apparently, they have no more merchandise left. It will stay up as an archive of what Mirage was, and obviously the history of the company. But you know, it's an end of an era.
Yes.
You know, it kind of ended in 2009, but it was still there. But Mirage is officially closed down. It's a sad day, you know, thinking about what Mirage Studios represents and what the success that you and Tim are having, you know, basically self-publishing, following in this footsteps of Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, kind of on your own.
Yeah, I mean, Eastman and Laird were kind of, when it comes to indie comics, they're one of the great success stories. They were two guys who basically made a parody comic in 1984 while they were roommates in an apartment in New York City, or I think Connecticut, somewhere in up there. And their parody comic of Daredevil and other Frank Miller books like Ronin was so popular that they just spun it out into a completely original series, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that just took off. I mean, that came out in '84. By 1987, they met Mark Friedman and Surge Licensing, and they had their cartoon and their toy line and their video games and everything in production. And by 1988, everybody in the world knew what Ninja Turtles was, and it became a global phenomenon. You know, within 4 years, they were on top of the world, just from going from, you know, a newsprint indie comic to, you know, multi-millionaires.
It's crazy. Obviously, they called it Mirage Studios because really there was no studio.
No,
it was just the two of them in a house creating comic books. And pretty crazy story. Obviously, we've had multiple films, lots of cartoons, video games. I remember the arcade game with like the cool top on it.
Oh, yeah.
That day was good. The NES game was really cool where you could swim underwater and you had to defuse the bombs.
Oh, man, so all the NES games are good. I mean, the first one's frustrating, but then the second one, you know, adapted the arcade game. And the third one, the Manhattan Project, that's the one not a lot of people played. It was a side-scrolling beat-em-up by Konami, and it's actually one of their best ones. I really recommend if people skipped, you know, from TMNT Arcade to Turtles in Time and skipped Ninja Turtles 3, check that one out.
So obviously the original printings from Mirage Studios for TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is completely different. If you know Turtles from the movies or IDW, or maybe I think they did them at Image as well. If you know those iterations of Turtles, you are not reading the first iteration of Turtles. It's completely different. It's a lot more bloody, way more violent, and a lot more adult-oriented. It's a cool series. I like it. I've read a few of the first few volumes. And I'll say this, and people are going to think it's a criticism, Mark. The art itself looks very basic by Kevin Eastman. And it kind of is, you know, in comparison to what you're seeing as a standard of art today. But the layouts and the kinetic energy and the movement of the panels and the story in Kevin Eastman's art are almost unmatched. That's
the difference, is that so Eastman and Laird both have very different styles of art, but when they work together, you have Eastman's layouts and Laird's finishes and his details. They marry together. Their aesthetics, their styles, and their strengths come together so well that the best issues of the Mirage comic are the ones where Eastman and Laird work together. So I believe they worked together on the first 8 issues and the 4-issue micro series. Number 9 was by Michael Dooney. And then they came back and they did 10. And after issues 10 and 11, they started doing issues independently. Like Laird did number 12, and then Eastman did number 14. And they didn't really come back and do an issue together again until number 50, which was the first City at War storyline. So those first 11 issues are like the core ones, and they still like did layouts and thumbnails for like Return to New York, but that was done by Jim Lawson. And so their hands are, and they still wrote the scripts as well. So I mean, their influence is all over that series, all the way up through the end of City at War. But like, if you really want just the essential, like, Ninja Turtles by Mirage as you picture it in your head. What you think that Mirage Ninja Turtles are is those first 11 issues in the 4-issue microseries.
No, obviously, I have not read these physically. I've only read them digital, and the digital trade that I got was like the colored remastered version because that was what was on sale at Comixology.
Those colors, I don't like them. So it's like colorizing a black and white movie. You know, it doesn't look right. I mean, if you ever see like a colorized version of Night of the Living Dead or King Kong, it looks awful. It looks weird and fake. Those comics were done on duotone paper, which is one of the. It's almost like carbon paper. It was where you had the paper and underneath it was a piece of carbon, and that was how you did your shading. Was you used pressure on the page to create the duotone effect. And they don't make that paper anymore. It's an anachronism now. It's a lost art. But they inked and toned their comic for the black and white medium. So when you try to apply colors to it, it looks bad. It looks wrong. And they've tried plenty of times. There's at least been 3 or 4 different colorized editions of the Mirage comics over the past few years. I mean, the past decades, and it just never looks right. Even the times Kevin Eastman actually did a colorized version of the first 4 issues for First Comics back in the 80s, and even his own colors just didn't look right on that black and white art. So I always recommend that either hunt down the original issues, which is getting very pricey right now, or if you pick up they're called the Eastman and Laird Ultimate Collection. That's what they're called. IDW has these hardcovers that they call Ninja Turtles the Ultimate Collections, and those are the original black and white versions without the bad coloring applied to them, and those are the ones to get.
So what is it about Mirage that was special? Did they only do TMNT? Did they ever branch out?
They branched out, and they never had a success with any of their other titles. And it's not that those titles were bad. Michael Dooney had a 7-issue miniseries called Gizmo that I adore. I really love that one. It's about a robot in the future who just travels around with his buddy, who is an ex-mercenary, this big, like, fluffy koala-looking dude. And it's episodic. They just have these fun adventures. It's just a story about camaraderie, and it was great, but it didn't catch on. Jim Lawson had Bade Biker and Orson and Guzia Le Mans, which are these cool motorcycle comics, and they're great if you like motorcycles, but didn't catch on. Eastman and Laird, they tried to do an imprint called Next, which was supposed to be their version of superhero comics in the 90s. They had like Bioneers and Xenotech and Stupid Heroes, which is a parody, and none of that took off. I mean, they just couldn't land anything that wasn't Ninja Turtles. It's kind of sad, you know. I mean, it's not a bad thing to be a one-hit wonder, especially when you're as successful as you are, like Ninja Turtles was. But they tried, you know. Eastman left Mirage to do Tundra, and I mean, he put out Melting Pot, which is a great miniseries. The second heavy metal movie was an adaptation of Melting Pot, and even though that movie is not great, the Melting Pot comics are great. But Tundra didn't work out. Tundra flopped, and you know they just never recaptured the success that they had with Ninja Turtles. But that's okay because Ninja Turtles was huge.
Is that because they never really got Eastman Laird back together again all that often? Like, do you think that was the secret sauce? Was them together?
I think so. Especially if you read the issues that are just Eastman and the issues that are just Laird, you can tell that they both have very different interests and very different approaches, storytelling-wise, artistically. And like Laird's volume that he wrote by himself is Ninja Turtles Volume 4, and that's the one that he still hasn't finished yet. And as much as I would like to see it finished, it's not, storytelling-wise, it's not very good. It's actually very boring. It's very oddly paced. I don't care for it very much. I would like to see it finished just to have closure on that storyline, but it's very, I don't know, slow and meandering. And I mean, your mileage may vary. All the Turtle fans out there who've read Volume 4, there's certainly a lot of things about it that I like, you know, ideas within it. It's just when you sit down and you marathon like 10 issues of that story, you're like, wow, this really could have been 3 issues. It's so decompressed. Whereas like Eastman, his style is very much action-packed and high-octane. He did the Body Count miniseries in the 90s that he did with Simon Bisley, and that one is just blood, gore, tits, and swearing, and it's just like, oh, we're going to do a hard rated R Ninja Turtle comic, and it's just going to be a running gun battle for 4 issues, just nothing but violence and gore and chicks with huge racks, and it's like the most, I don't know, if it has like no plot, no content. It's just a whole lot of really cool, superficial stuff. And that's when they tell stories independently of each other. That's the kind of things that they do. But when they work together and both of their strengths were combined, that's when they did like Ninja Turtles 1 through 11 in the micro series. The absolute strongest work of their career was when they worked together. It's just the way it is.
So what happened to the two? I know I saw they got into a little bit on the, I think it was the movies that made us, or is it Toys That Made Us? I think it's the
Toys That Made Us. Yeah.
Yeah. But they got into a little bit, but it's unfortunate there was a falling out. I don't know. I've always felt like maybe fans appreciated Kevin Eastman more because he's a little bit younger, a little bit more charismatic than Peter Laird. And I guess the two eventually just couldn't work together.
You know, it's one of those things where it feels like it's not my business. So I've, you know, people, I always kind of assume that they had some big fight. I honestly don't know if they did. I've never really looked into what made them go away. I think they just kind of wanted to do different kinds of storytelling. I mean, Eastman wanted to go and do Tundra. Laird wanted to just stay and keep managing Mirage. And then they both still owned, you know, 50% stakes in Ninja Turtles. So everything Ninja Turtles had to be approved by both of them all the way up until, I want to say, like the mid-2000s or the early 2000s when Laird bought Eastman's 50% intellectual property stake in Ninja Turtles. And so Laird ended up with 100% of the rights to Ninja Turtles, which then in 2009 he sold to Viacom.
For a lot of money.
For a whole lot of money, probably more than what he paid Eastman for his half of the rights, but a lot more. But, you know, that's their business. That's between the two of them. I don't know if they're friends or not. I don't know if they had a big fight. None of my business. I think they just creatively, they wanted to do different projects that just didn't involve each other. And, you know, it's kind of like I was watching this documentary by Joe Ramone on Laurel and Hardy. And there was a point, you know, Laurel and Hardy were, you know, the comedic duo, but there was a point where they just decided like, hey, let's just go make different movies from each other. And it wasn't like they had some big fight and they hated each other. They just wanted to do different movies that didn't involve each other. And then when they were done making those movies, they got back together and they went back to making their comedy routines until they died. Just sometimes it's like that.
Absolutely. Even the best friends sometimes need a little bit of a break. Yeah. It's unfortunate we didn't, you know, obviously get more of the Eastman and Laird TMNT. As much as I enjoyed the Tom Waltz, you know, written, you know, Kevin Eastman obviously had a part in it in IDW and some of the other stuff. And I think there's been some really good runs in TMNT. It doesn't ever feel as good as that original like run. No,
and I think that there are some fantastic highs. So the issue with trying to read the Mirage Ninja Turtles series is that it's not intuitive. You think it would be because it starts out that way, but once you start getting into the teens and especially into the 20s and 30s and 40s, they have just this deluge of guest stories. Some of them are canon, some of them aren't, some of them are reboots. A lot of them are just these like goofy, surreal slapstick comedy stories with the Turtles, and you're just like, what the heck is happening? There's an ongoing storyline, but it gets completely lost in all these weird guest issues. And they eventually corrected that. You know, they got a lot of flack from readers and fans who just did not like those guest stories, not because the stories, or at least all of them, were bad, but because they wanted to follow the storyline.
They're interrupting the flow.
Exactly. It was just messing up the pacing. And so Eastman and Laird finally corrected that. And but Ninja Turtles Volume 1 from Mirage, if you just slim it down to the canon issues and then you add in the micro series and Tales Volume 1, which is a 7-issue short series, it tells a fantastic, complete narrative of the Turtles. It has a great 3-act structure. It's the Turtles, they kill Shredder. Shredder comes back. They get exiled to Northampton. They return to New York. They kill the Shredder again. Then they take a break. And that's when all the weird one-off non-canon slapstick stories happen. But then it comes back to City at War, and City at War is the aftermath of everything they did. The 2 times they killed the Shredder, all those stories. This is the consequences of everything they've done, and it's this tremendous, gritty grind of, I think it's an 11-issue story arc or a 16-issue story arc. It's very long, but it's very intense, and the Turtles are put through the ringer. And when you finally get to the finale, the last issue of Volume 1, it feels like such a solid, satisfying ending. I mean, that Ninja Turtles Volume 1 from Mirage is, if you ignore all the slapstick, surreal comedy guest stories, it tells a very good narrative. But then there's more volumes after that, and none of them, you know, quite recapture that sort of. They don't have a direction, and so a lot of those volumes, Volume 2, Volume 3, which is the Image series, and then especially Volume 4, they just sort of like wander around aimlessly. Nothing's as well structured as Volume 1, ironically, since that's the one that has the weird guest issues.
You know, it's also crazy if you go and you read TMNT and you read some of the different iterations, you essentially get Volume 1 retold multiple times.
Volume 1, I mean,
yeah, Leonardo gets ends up fighting Shredder on his own. He gets his ass whooped.
Yeah,
the building gets burned down. They have to escape. They come back. And eventually, you always end up at City at War.
Right. It's like, how many times can you watch the Green Goblin throw Gwen Stacy or sometimes MJ off the bridge? You know, it's like, how many Spider-Man adaptations have to do that issue? But that's because it's like the most famous issue of Spider-Man. Well, same thing with Ninja Turtles. Like, how many times can you see Leonardo, or in the case of the first movie, Raphael, get beat up by the Shredder, and then they get exiled and they have to go back to New York and face him again? Like, we saw that in the first live-action movie. We saw that in the 2003 cartoon. We saw that in the IDW comic. We saw that in the 2012 cartoon. You know, we just keep getting that over and over again. But it's such a good story. You know, you almost can't blame them. Every new creator who comes by to do their own adaptation, they all want to take a swing at that Exiled in Northampton storyline, because it's you know, the quintessential Ninja Turtle story from the source material.
So we'll kind of in this kind of talking about the changes that ended up happening to the Turtles were essentially out of Laird and Eastman's hands once they made the deals. You got the cartoon, which takes a lot of liberties with the original incantation of the TMNTs. You get the colored bandanas, which I think is probably a good change. But Michelangelo's character has changed dramatically. Yeah. Even Leonardo, Donatello, they all changed a lot. And those are kind of what the canon version of the characters are now. And
it's what people know.
It seems like it really upset Peter Laird, especially, that his version of Turtles didn't really make it.
You know, it's one of those weird things, is that they still had the authority to approve and reject every single Ninja Turtles thing that was submitted. They had to read every script of the Fred Wolf cartoon, the 87 cartoon, and either approve or reject it. So, I mean, they had the authority to say no at any point. And they allowed, you know, those versions of the Turtles to, you know, proliferate and go out there and become very popular and make them a lot of money. And I think that's what it came down to. If you read the letters pages in the Mirage comics, they address that constantly. You know, they get a lot of letters from people saying that they sold out, or that their version, you know, that's on the cartoon and the toy lines and stuff is nothing like the Mirage comics, and that it's like a bastardization. And Laird and Eastman in the letters columns always reply with like, but the Mirage version is still the Mirage version, and it'll always be here. This is our version of the Turtles. If you like the version that's out there in the cartoons and toy lines, that's great. If you don't, then just ignore it and read the Mirage comics. But it's not going to affect our version. Our version is going to remain pure. So they're able to keep those distinct. And I only know of one time where they actually rejected something from the Fred Wolf cartoon. Is they had this character from the Ninja Turtles Adventures comic for the Archie comics named Man Ray, and his action figure was called Ray Fillet. He was the Manta Ray character, and they were doing a version of that in the cartoon where he was going to be a villain. And Steve Murphy, who was a Mirage staffer who created Man Ray, actually asked Eastman and Laird to reject that script because they didn't like what they were doing with the character he created. And so because they were friends, they rejected that script from Fred Wolf. And so the character that shows up in that episode of the cartoon is called just Ray, and he's like totally different. He's not at all like, Man Ray, Steve Murphy's character. So they did have the authority to say no to a script. It's just that most of the time they didn't, because they got a lot of money by just letting the Ninja Turtles out there in the cartoon world just be its own thing. And they certainly
made a lot a lot of money. They, congratulations.
Yeah.
I like to see people be rewarded on their efforts, and I like seeing people like you and Tim following in their footsteps and going and realizing their dreams. And hey, back in the day, you had to fake like you had a studio. You and Tim are able to go out there and reach people individually on crowdfunding and really grow your brand and awareness of what you guys are doing. And I think it's awesome. Do you think we'll ever see the Mirage versions of the Turtles ever in a cartoon or a movie? We've always hear that rumor, that first animated Turtles movie that was like 3D animated. Everyone thought that was going to be the Mirage version of Turtles, and it
wasn't. So that really is. If we didn't get it when Laird still owned the Turtles, if we couldn't get that version, in a film or even a direct-to-video animated film, before 2009 when Laird and Mirage still owned the Turtles, it is much less likely now that the Viacom Corporation and Nickelodeon own the Ninja Turtles that they will allow anything authentic to the Mirage version to be properly adapted. Now, the Mirage Turtles did have a cameo. They've cameoed in a couple of the cartoons. They had that crossover called Turtles Forever, where they met the Fred Wolf Turtles and the Four Kids Turtles, the 2003 version. That was a crossover movie. And they made a lot of like funny jokes about how much more violent the Mirage Turtles were than the others, and that was actually pretty funny. And they cameoed again, like really briefly, in the 2012 CG cartoon. They did another crossover with the 80s Turtles and the 2012 Turtles, but we haven't like really gotten an adaptation, and I don't think we will. I know that Viacom has experimented with more violent versions of the Turtles. That Batman crossover animated movie, which I really enjoyed, that's more violent. That's got some blood in it. That's got a lot of murder and killing in it. It's not the Mirage Turtles at all. They still have their colored bandanas and the cartoon personalities and everything. But we know that Viacom is willing to try something a little darker here and there. I just don't think they'll ever go full Mirage. I just don't have faith in that. Obviously,
the last time we saw the Mirage, a Mirage version of a turtle in a comic book, it was TMNT Batman, Volume 3.
Yeah. Yep.
We got Raphael, right?
Yeah, and I enjoyed that a lot. Freddie Williams' art, and even Eastman drew. So it was Freddie Williams' art, but Eastman drew Mirage Raph in that miniseries. Just Raph. All the other art was by him, and I thought that was a really cool
it was
detail.
Awesome. The aesthetic was awesome.
Yeah, it was great, and it also made it feel really authentic because like that is the Mirage Raph because he's drawn by the Mirage guy, Raph Eastman, and like that was really cool. I like that they
over that page. I was like, what the?
Yeah.
So what is he doing here?
Right. So you never know. I don't think we'll get anything mainstream with the Mirage Turtles, but I think we'll get some stuff here and there. It'll probably be more niche, like the Batman TMNT comic book, that IDW published with DC. But we're not going to get like a direct-to-video animated film that is a like 1:1 representation of the Mirage comic. Viacom they're not going to do that. I mean, the Ninja Turtles are going to show up in that new Nickelodeon All-Stars fighting game, the one that's got like SpongeBob and Ren and Stimpy and all of them fighting each other Smash Brothers style, and it's going to be the 80s Turtles, like that's the version that Viacom wants to push right now because that's the most marketable and popular version. I just don't see them touching the Mirage version.
So there are some crowdfunders. I guess we should make people aware of this. There's a couple of creators that are essentially creating or continuing the origin stories and stuff of like the original Mirage stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
yes, and I've actually gotten to collaborate with them and work with them. Arseny Dubakov, he's actually over in Russia, but he has his own studio in Russia called Illusion Studios, which obviously he named in honor of Mirage Studios, and he has the publishing license in Russia to reprint and publish Ninja Turtle comics. So he publishes a lot of official Russian translations and distributions of the English versions of the IDW, the Mirage books, the Archie books. And I got to say, he sent me several of his Russian editions, and they're gorgeous because he's a Turtles fan. So the amount of effort he puts into like these really gorgeous hardcover collections of the like Ninja Turtle Adventures series and the Mirage series, they blow away the IDW reprints that we've been getting in the U.S., and he's just absolutely killing it over there in Russia. But he publishes his own Ninja Turtle comics that unofficially continue the storyline of the Mirage books, and he gets as many Mirage staffers as he can. So he's gotten Jim Lawson draws most of those issues, and Jim Lawson, if you've ever read a Mirage comic that wasn't by Eastman and Laird, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be drawn by Jim Lawson. He's the #1 most prolific Ninja Turtles artist of all time. He's drawn, I'd say, probably close to 1,000 issues of Ninja Turtles. He gets Dan Berger, he gets AC Farley, he gets everybody who worked at Mirage, like Steve Levine, all those people to contribute. Before IDW published a conclusion to the Image series, because the Image series got canceled before it could be finished, before IDW got Frank Fosco and Gary Carlson together to do their conclusion, Arseni and Andrew Modine, who is a filmmaker here in the U.S., is also a Ninja Turtle fan and works with Arseni. They got Fosco and Carlson together to do a conclusion to Volume 3. So there's 2 different conclusions to Volume 3 out there by the same people, Fosco and Carlson. They're both good. I like them both. But that's what they've been doing. And I've actually gotten to contribute a couple of stories to their books, drawn by Jim Lawson and Dan Berger, and an excellent artist named his pen name is Powder. And he drew a great Michelangelo story for me. He made it look a lot better than it deserved. So I've been very happy to work with them and see my Ninja Turtle scripts drawn by the Mirage staff.
So the projects that they do on Kickstarter are comics that were already released in Russia, but now they're like...
No. So the stuff that he publishes that he does through Kickstarter are nonprofits. They're just to pay for the cost of printing and shipping. So the most recent one is called TMNT The Shredder, and it's a deep dive backstory of the Mirage version of the Shredder. And anybody who's read the Mirage Ninja Turtle comics know that the Shredder's barely in them. I think collectively he's in 6 issues across 20 years of comics. He's just barely in them. So the Mirage, so this TMNT Shredder graphic novel basically fills in all the gaps in his history, tells a new story with him. He has several final showdowns with the Turtles in the Mirage book, but this is one that's a bit more satisfying than his last encounter. So the last time chronologically in the Mirage book that the Shredder fought the Turtles was during a storyline where the Shredder got mutated into a giant shark octopus monster, and it's kind of goofy. It was good. I like that storyline. It's a great 3-issue storyline, even if Rick Remender was involved. But it's not how you would want the final encounter between the Turtles and the Shredder to be. So this storyline is giving a bit more of a satisfying conclusion to Mirage Shredder's narrative. Plus filling in all the stuff that we didn't know about in his history. So it all looks very fascinating. It's by Modine and Jim Lawson, Mirage's Jim Lawson, and published by Arseni. So I'm really looking forward to it. Oh, and another thing Arseni's doing that's really cool is he is publishing the final 5 issues of TMNT Adventures, the Archie series, that never got published. Chris Allen and Steve Murphy had a 5-issue story arc that was going to end TMNT Adventures called The Forever War. And they both got fired by the editor at Archie because he thought the book was getting too dark. So those 5 issues never got published, and they never got completed. I think Chris Allen only penciled the first issue and a half of it. But Arseni got Chris Allen back, got the scripts from Steve Murphy, and Chris Allen's finished up those 5 issues. Arseni's actually sent me the first 4 of those 5 issues, and is really good. It's classic TMNT Adventures Archie comics. It's the 5-issue story arc we were supposed to get back in like 1996 and never did, and Arseni's publishing it, so that's really exciting.
Is he publishing it in Russian or English? Both?
Both. So you can always order Arseni's books in English or Russian, if you're Russian. I've actually done some editing for him. So one of the other things that he published recently was he found that there was a series of Ninja Turtle comics published in Italy, and they're all original comics. And so he got all those, but they're all in Italian. So he got them translated from Italian to Russian to English. And then he hired me to make sense of those scripts and to basically rewrite the scripts, edit them and rewrite them so that they make sense, that they read well. And they're called, I actually have the hardcover sitting on my shelf right now that I have an editing credit on. It's called what's it called? Here we go. It's the complete Il Giornalino collection, Le Tartarune Ninja Turtles. And it's this really nice, oversized hardcover of collecting the first year of the Italian Ninja Turtle comics. And that was a really fun project to work on.
That's really cool. And can people find these? Like, I didn't even know these existed.
Yeah, I mean, you can hunt down Arseny Dubikov. He's on Facebook. Let me see if he's got a website.
He's got to have an e-commerce site, right?
Yeah, let's see. Arseny Dubikov. Where is he? What is his site? He may have. I think that when it comes, he can't sell directly. Because IDW has the distribution rights in the U.S. But if you contact him on Facebook or wherever, he can help you get those books. So yeah, just Arseny Dubikov. He's on Instagram. He's on Facebook. He's on Pinterest and Comic Vine. He's also an artist. He's a very good artist. But yeah,
that's crazy. There's more Mirage out there that nobody even knows about. They got the conclusions of stories. We got Italian TMNT. My goodness.
Oh yeah, and he sells his stuff on eBay. That's where you go to find his stuff. He has an eBay store. So there you go.
There you go. Well, Mark, I do want to say thank you very much. We talked a little bit more than just Mirage Studios, but obviously an indelible legacy that'll stand the test of time. TMNT is not going anywhere. 100 years, I imagine we're still going to have 4 turtle brothers eating pizza and saying Cowabunga.
Yeah, Turtles is one of those rare IPs that's perennial. It's like Transformers. There's always a version of Transformers out there. There's always a version of Turtles out there. It's never stopped and it's never going to.